Chapter 7. The Sentencing of King Darius. The final day of judgment dawned cold and grey. The people of Drakar Hollow gathered once more in the great hall of judgment, though now something had changed. Fury had cooled into something quieter, heavier, a kingdom watching history unfold. Chains rattled as Darius was brought forth, still bound in dragonsteel cuffs, still carrying the remnants of pride in the set of his jaw, but his eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness. High Elder Merrick stood at the centre dais, flanked by the full council. Garran stood behind them, now garbed in the black and silver mantle of the interim king. The queen was seated high above, still and silent as carved stone. Merrick spoke. "Darius of Drakar Hollow, you have been tried under the laws of this realm. Evidence of treason, conspiracy, and blood crimes has been laid before this council and the people." The hall was silent. The time has come for sentencing. But first, there was one final chance. Merrick's voice shifted, not softer but measured. "You claimed before recess that you did not act alone." Murmurs stirred. "Once more we ask, name those who conspired with you. Speak, and some mercy may yet be granted." Darius lifted his chin, eyes sharp. "I will bargain only if I am guaranteed exile or clemency." Merrick's face did not change. "No such mercy can be promised, but cooperation will still carry weight." For a long moment Darius held his silence. Then he spoke. "There was one who stood above all others, one who brought the witch to me, one who—" He stopped. He looked at the elders, counted them, and his voice broke. "Elgin." Merrick's gaze darkened. "You are too late." A ripple moved through the nobles. Darius stared. "What do you mean?" "Last night," Merrick said, "Elder Elgin attempted to enter your cell by the lower tunnels. He carried poison to silence you before you spoke his name." Darius's breath caught, rage, disbelief, and a flicker of something almost like grief. "He is dead," he whispered. "By his own hand," Garran answered. The words struck like a blade. Even the crowd was silent. Darius's shoulders sagged, not dramatically, just collapsed, like a pillar cracked through its core. He understood, fully and finally. He had no allies left. The traffickers who served the witch were dead or fled. His loyal servants had scattered at his arrest. There was no one left to name, no one left to accuse, no one left to bargain with, except his mind turned toward his daughter, Seraphine, the one person he still loved, the one person still undiscovered. A silence stretched. The council waited for one last name. He could speak it. He could save himself. He closed his eyes instead. When he opened them, they were hollow. "I have no other names." Merrick nodded once. "So be it." He lifted the sentencing decree. "Darius of Drakar Hollow, by the laws you once swore to uphold, you are hereby stripped of title, rank, and all ancestral claims of House Drakar." There was no outrage this time, only the quiet certainty of a realm recoiling from the crumbling of a dynasty. "You are condemned to death by judgment of the council." The hall was silent. No cheers, no outrage, only the quiet, shattering, heavy acceptance of a judgment never heard in the history of the kingdom. Darius stood still for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, he lifted his head and turned, not to the council, not to the queen, but to Garran. His voice was low, steady, and cold. "You will not have the satisfaction of an executioner's blade." He stepped forward as far as the chains allowed. "I call for the challenge of blood." A hush fell over the chamber as the words left Darius's mouth. The people looked around in confusion. Garran could hear the question, "What is the challenge of blood?" being repeated over and over. "By ancient right," High Elder Merrick said slowly, as if the air itself resisted the declaration. The condemned has invoked the challenge of blood. A low murmur rippled through the elders. Another spoke, voice rough with age and disbelief. That law has not been called in living memory. Another elder, eyes hollow with grief, added quietly, "Only one among us might have remembered the last time it was called." The name of the dead elder was not spoken. It hung between them like smoke. A third elder exhaled slowly, and now he is ashes himself. Fitting that this cursed rite returns with his passing. Merrick lifted his staff. His voice rang out clear, above the confusion. If the challenger falls in combat, the sentence is carried out by the blade itself. His life is forfeit by law and by flame. "And if he wins?" another elder asked quietly. Silence stretched. Merrick's jaw tightened. "Then the crown reverts to him, by right of blood." A ripple of unease moved through the hall. "Which means," another elder said darkly, "every arrest, every decree, every truth uncovered in this court would be swept away. And the realm," one added, "would answer to the very man who sold it." All eyes turned to Garran, the last brother with honor, the last hope of a kingdom in chaos, interim king by oath, not by desire. He stood alone beneath the weight of every gaze. The burden was not one he had sought, yet it had found him all the same. He stepped forward without pause, his eyes on his disgraced brother. "I accept." The crowd surged again, but Merrick struck the stone once more, iron will in the sound. "Hear the binding terms before the fire of the people overtakes the fire of law." Silence fell hard. "The duel will take place at high noon, when the sun stands highest and no shadow may conceal deceit." A tremor of awe stirred the chamber. "It shall be fought in the elders' arena. All who wish to bear witness may attend." The words settled like ash. "Both combatants will fight in human form." Gasps broke the stillness. "No full shifting," Merrick continued. "No wings, no claws." A pause. "As royals of Drakar blood, partial shifting is permitted, scales for protection only." Relief flickered, and fear followed swiftly behind it. "And let all understand this clearly," he said, his voice turning cold as forged steel. "No dragonfire." "If flame is loosed," Merrick said, unmoved, "the offender will be slain where he stands, a bolt to the skull. No appeal, no martyrdom." No one breathed. "The fight is to the death," he concluded, "or until one yields." He raised his staff one final time. "By the first fire of our fathers, the realm is bound to this reckoning." Chapter 8. The Challenge of Blood. The arena was full to its highest tier, stone seats brimming with nobles, warriors, and citizens who had never witnessed such a rite in their lifetimes. The sun hung directly overhead, merciless, bright, unwavering. High noon. Two men stood in the center of the ring, brothers by blood, enemies by fate. Darius wore the colors of a king, cold, proud, unforgiving. Garran wore no crown, only the leathers of a warrior who had never stopped training. High Elder Merrick raised his voice, echoing through the stillness. "Let all remember the laws of this challenge. Both combatants stand in human form. Partial shift is permitted, scales for defense only. Dragonfire is forbidden. Any attempt will be met with death." Around the ring, crossbowmen stood ready, steady, silent. Merrick lifted his staff. "This duel continues until one yields or falls." He nodded once to the herald. The horn sounded, long and low. A ceremonial flag dropped from the highest pillar. The duel began. Darius struck first, fast, confident, almost eager. His dragon steel blade flashed in the sun, catching sparks of reflected light. Garran parried easily, then again and again. The crowd leaned forward, remembering suddenly that Garran had once been the quieter brother, the gentler one. the softer flame. But that was a lifetime ago. He had been training warriors daily, leading battles, sharpening not only his blade, but his instincts. After the first exchange, it was clear Darius was strong, but Garran was stronger. Darius was quick, but Garran was practiced. Darius fought like a man who expected to win. Garran fought like a man who could not afford to lose. Minutes passed. Sweat dripped from their brows. Scales rippled across their forearms and throats, shimmering black and red, catching the sun. When Darius realized he could not overpower his brother, his fury ignited. He snarled between blows. "You think this throne will be yours? You think she'll stand beside you now?" Garran said nothing. Darius's voice rose, desperate, cracking. "She was meant to be yours. You think I didn't know. You think I didn't see the bond, the way she looked at you." His strikes grew wild. Rage replaced precision. Garran blocked each blow, not easily anymore, but solidly, steadily. Darius's breath grew ragged. He was losing. He knew it. The crowd knew it too. A final clash, steel meeting steel, and Garran twisted, disarming his brother. Darius fell hard onto his back. He lay in the sand of the arena, Garran's sword at his throat, chest heaving, pride stripped bare. At last he rasped, "I yield." A stunned murmur of relief rippled through the crowd. It was done. By ancient law, a yield ended the challenge. Darius let out a shaking breath and slowly, deliberately, he withdrew his scales. The black and crimson shimmer faded from his skin, leaving it bare, human, unarmored, vulnerable. A necessary act of surrender. Garran stepped back. He sheathed his sword. No victor's pose, no triumph, only a heavy, quiet finality. He turned toward the queen. Their eyes met across the arena, and for the first time in decades, her expression softened. A small, trembling smile formed, relief breaking through terror. It lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. Darius saw it, saw her smile for Garran, saw the truth he had always buried, that she had never been his. Something snapped, silent, sudden, fatal. Darius surged to his feet, snatching up his fallen sword. Fury twisted his features into something feral. He lunged. It happened fast, too fast. Garran heard the queen scream his name. He turned instinctively, but his sword was still sheathed. There was no time to draw it. He had taken only 3 steps toward her. His back was still open. Darius raised the blade for a killing stroke, but another figure moved first. Lord Rian, the forgotten twin, the other disgraced brother, the one who had fled the council chamber in shame. He threw himself between them. Steel met flesh. Darius's sword drove straight into Rian's chest, deep, true, fatal. Rian staggered, eyes wide, mouth filling with blood. Still, he turned toward Garran, voice ragged and thin. "At least once, I did the right thing." Behind them, Elder Merrick's voice tore through the air. "Archers, loose!" Now that Darius was fully human, undefended by scales, the crossbowmen fired. 3 bolts flew. One struck his throat, one pierced his heart, one split his skull. This time, he fell and did not rise. Rian collapsed beside him, breath fading. Garran caught him, lowering him gently to the blood-stained sand. Rian's gaze found his, full of pain but also peace. "I was a poor brother," he whispered, "but I have finally redeemed myself." Garran bowed his head. "You have. Thank you, brother." Rian exhaled once, a final breath. Then he too was still. The arena was silent, not a sound, not even the wind. 2 brothers dead, 1 brother standing, and high in the stands, a queen had lost a husband, but regained her life. And perhaps, if fate allowed, something far older, something far truer, something that had waited decades to be free. Chapter 9. Garran alone after the duel. The arena had emptied. The blood had dried into the sand. The sun was lower now, less a judge, more a witness. Garran stood alone where his brothers had fallen. The wind stirred. His sword hung heavy at his side, his heart heavier still. He had not wanted this, not the crown, not the duel, and gods, not this moment. Standing in victory, and still feeling like he'd lost everything. Ryan's last words echoed, at least once. I did the right thing. Garran closed his eyes. Ryan had tried to make peace in the only way he could. But Darius had chosen death long before the duel ever began. And still, Garran was relieved he hadn't struck the final blow. He didn't want that stain, not on his soul, not between him and the Queen, Elara. Her name alone made something inside him tighten. He had buried so much, so deeply, for so long, 100 years. He had endured the pain of her mating with Darius, stood silent during their wedding ceremony, watched her bear a child not his, watched her become smaller, dimmer, quieter under Darius's rule. The dragon inside him had raged, begged to break free, begged to claim her, begged to fight. But Garran had mastered himself, mastered his rage, mastered the bond, mastered the ache of never rejecting her, never truly severing what they once shared. Because he couldn't. She had rejected him once because her parents demanded it, because duty was stronger than love. But he had never repeated the words back. He had never said, I release you. He had never said, we are no more. He had simply waited for a century. He opened his eyes. Enough. He was king now, whether he wanted it or not. The realm needed him, the people needed him, but his heart, his soul, his dragon, they needed her, and he needed to know. Could a broken bond be reforged? Could lost love still burn? Could they still heal together? He sheathed his sword, not like a warrior done with blood, but like a man preparing to face something far more dangerous, hope. He found her before the evening meal, alone in the gardens, still in mourning black, head bowed. She did not hear him approach. He spoke softly, but with the weight of years behind it. Elara, she turned, startled, breath catching. He stepped closer. I need to ask you something I should have asked 100 years ago. Her heart stopped beating, just for a second. The wind stirred between them. He held her gaze. You rejected me once. I understood why, but I never rejected you in return. I never broke our bond. She froze, eyes widening, shock and something like fear threading through her grief. My heart never yielded, he said. Not to distance, not to duty, not even to time. A breath, a pause. Then gently, achingly, tell me, Elara, is it too late? The dragon within him waited, hope barely contained, for us, for the bond, for what we once were and what we still might be. He took one final step, close enough for truth. I would have died today without knowing, but I refuse to live without asking. Silence fell. He watched Elara's face. Her careful mask cracked as vulnerability flashed in her eyes. But he also saw the flash of her dragon in her eyes. The silence that surrounded them was steeped in questions, unanswered. Chapter 10. The Queen's Answer. Elara stood frozen for a heartbeat, not from fear, but from hope, expanding too fast for her to process it. Her dragon whimpered. Longing flashed through them both. She was finally being seen, not as a queen, not as a widow, not as a symbol, but as herself, the woman who once loved him, the woman who never stopped. Garran waited, still and steady, though battle-worn and grieving. He had never looked more like a king, not because of the mantle, because of the honesty in his eyes. She drew in a breath, slow, unsteady. Garran, I spent a century trying to teach myself not to hope for this moment. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't waver. My parents pushed me into a crown I didn't want, with a man I did not love. I obeyed. I swallowed every part of myself that dared to dream of something different, something real. She stepped closer. In time, I forgot how to speak freely, how to choose freely, how to feel freely. Her voice thickened. But I never forgot you. His breath caught. The dragon inside him roared in victory and uttered the word drowned out by duty for decades. Mate. I loved you, she said, before they told me I must marry your brother, before they made me an ornament instead of a queen. Her eyes shone, and I love you still. Garran closed his eyes, not withholding emotion this time, but savouring the release of it. She continued, more certain now, more true. I was a queen in name only. My crown meant nothing. My voice was stolen, my freedom traded away. A soft fierceness entered her tone. But now I am free, truly free. Darius is gone. My parents are long dead. No one can force my hand or silence my heart. She reached for Garran's hand, her mate. It had been so long since they had touched. You asked if it's too late. She shook her head, eyes never leaving his. It has always been you, even when I could not have you, even when I was bound to another, even when I pretended acceptance. Her voice broke, just once. I would take the bond back, if you would have me. Garran let out a breath that sounded like a man stepping out of a century of darkness and into dawn. Elara, she pressed her forehead to his. No more obedience, no more silence, no more duty above love. She lifted his hand and placed it over her heart. This time I choose. A pause, soft, certain. I choose you. The bond stirred, ancient, wounded, waiting. And then, slowly, reverently, it began to mend. Chapter 11. The Announcement and Seraphine's Outburst. The following day, the atmosphere in the great court hall felt different, lighter, warmer, as if the kingdom itself had taken its first real breath in years. The nobles gathered with cautious hope. Servants whispered of new beginnings. Even the stone columns, sharp and ancient, seemed to hold less shadow. At the high table, King Garran stood beside Queen Elara, not behind nor apart, but with her. The rumble of conversation grew louder. He raised a hand for silence. People of Drakar Hollow, he began, his voice steady, resonant. We have endured betrayal, loss and darkness, but now it is time for truth, for healing, and for change. He reached for Elara's hand. We are pleased to announce, he said, that the Queen and I will be wed. Gasps, soft, hopeful, disbelieving, rose through the hall. Elara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. Let it also be known that ours is not a new bond, but an old one. We were fated mates, separated by politics, not by choice. The court stiffened, then leaned in. A few elders lowered their heads in shame. We honor duty, she continued, but we have lived through proof that duty without truth becomes a cage. Today, we choose to rebuild this realm not through strategic alliances, but through love, through trust, through what was always meant to be. Applause began, hesitant at first, then swelling, joy rising, almost disbelieving. For the first time in memory, there was hope. Until the doors burst open, Princess Seraphine swept into the hall in a gown far too jeweled for mourning, chin lifted, eyes glittering with fury. Stop this farce! Voices stilled, Garran's jaw tightened. Elara went still as winter glass. Seraphine stalked forward, voice rising in a shrill declaration. My mother was unfaithful to my father. This union proves it. A ripple of shock, but no gasp of belief. Elara met her daughter's gaze, sad but unflinching. I never broke my vows, not once, Seraphine scoffed. You expect them to believe that? Garran's voice cut in, low, dangerous. Yes. He reached into his cloak and withdrew a black leather book, one the court recognized, the trafficker's ledger. I have spent the morning reviewing this, he said, opening to a page marked with a ribbon, and I found something that concerns not the Queen, but you. Seraphine paled. He read, Payment received from S of Drakar Hollow. Girl delivered. No witnesses. A gasp, this time of horror. Merrick, in the back, rose sharply to his feet. Elara went white. Not Lyra. Garran closed the book and shook his head. Lyra was not the first, nor the second. Your daughter, he looked at Seraphine, eyes like cold flame, committed these acts repeatedly according to the ledger. Seraphine trembled, not with fear, with rage. You can't prove. He held the ledger high. Everyone's eyes flickered between Seraphine and the ledger in horror. This ledger is proof enough, Garran said. But there are witnesses too. Guards she bribed, servants she threatened, and one survivor now strong enough to testify. She's a monster, someone announced in disgust. Two guards stepped forward. Princess Seraphine, Garran said formally. You are placed under arrest for authorizing atrocities against the citizens of Drakar Hollow. You will be tried tomorrow at dawn. The hall watched, silent, disbelieving as the princess was seized and placed in dragon cuffs. She shrieked in outrage. You think they'll accept your rule after this? You think they'll love a queen who raised a monster? Elara finally spoke. I was a prisoner in my own palace. I see now how much I failed to prevent, but I will not fail again. Seraphine's face twisted in hatred. You will regret this, she screamed as the guards dragged her out of the throne room. Elara's voice was quiet, steady, regal. No, I regret every day I let darkness stand beside me unanswered. That time is over. The doors slammed shut, cutting off Seraphine's rant. Silence hung for a moment. Then someone began to clap. Another joined, then another, until the entire hall was applauding, not just the upcoming union, but the restoring of justice and the beginning of a new future. Chapter 12. A Month of Reckoning. So much had changed in the past month. The kingdom that once held its breath under fear, anxiety, and silence had begun to heal. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. After the resolution of Seraphine's trial, there was no longer any doubt where guilt lay. The dates and times recorded in the trafficker's ledger, backed by the witnesses, the trembling testimonies of courtiers who had lived in quiet terror. Seraphine had no defense to offer, and no allies willing to speak for her. The council stripped her of her dragon, exiled her to the human world, and forbade her return under penalty of death. Justice, swift and final, was served, and only then, with the last shadow of Darius's corruption cut away, could the kingdom mourn the brother who did not choose evil. Lord Rian's funeral was held at twilight. In keeping with dragon tradition, a pyre of cedar and ash wood was built in the high clearing above the valley. No speeches were given, none were needed. Honor does not require explanation. Garran lit the pyre himself with a breath of dragon fire, not in rage, not in sorrow alone, but in respect, in forgiveness, in final peace. The flames carried Ryan's spirit skyward, to the ancestors who would judge him not by his failings, but by the sacrifice that redeemed them. Darius, by contrast, had already been disposed of. His body was taken to the Badlands, the same wasteland where the traffickers once hid, where corruption rooted deep into the earth. He was buried without pyre, without stone, without name. A coward, a traitor, a warning. 2 brothers gone, 1 brother standing, and a kingdom ready, at last, to rise. Chapter 13. A New Dawn. The morning of the wedding dawned with soft light spilling over the stone towers of Drakar Hollow. No banners of mourning hung today, no whispers of treason, no shadows at the edges of the great hall. Today the realm was ready to celebrate. Elara entered the great hall as if born of light itself. Lilac satin and lace flowed around her in soft, shimmering folds, the custom gown whispering against the stone with every measured step. Her golden hair was swept into a graceful updo, delicate tendrils framing a face radiant with quiet strength and restrained emotion. She did not rush. She did not falter. Every movement spoke of sovereignty earned, not merely inherited. Regal, composed, and breathtakingly beautiful. Garran waited for her, dressed in ceremonial leathers stitched with the sigil of Jose Drakar, though he wore no crown. At the stir of the hall, he lifted his gaze and found her, Elara. For a single suspended breath, the weight of crown and loss fell silent. Lilac satin shimmered as she approached, luminous and composed, and something deep in his chest tightened with a truth he had never escaped. Of all the things this day demanded of him, she remained the one thing he had never learned to surrender. Elara met his gaze and felt the years between them fall away in silence. Duty still bound them both, but the truth of what had never been finished lived on in his eyes. Their vows were spoken in the old language, the one rarely heard in public ceremonies anymore. Flame to flame, soul to soul, we rise as one. When they kissed, dragons wheeled overhead, not as symbols of power, but of blessing. After the lavish reception, attended by all of Drakar Hollow and the royal family of Orenvale, Lyra and her husband stood at the forefront, their presence a living promise that stolen futures could be reclaimed. They would govern in the royal couple's absence, their leadership already trusted by the people. Because today, for the first time in more than a century, the king and queen were doing something unthinkable. They left the throne, not in retreat, not in exile, but in choice to be together. They would spend a full month on Ember Isle, a royal sanctuary untouched by war, blood, or duty, alone at last, as they had once only dared to dream. A honeymoon 100 years overdue. At the cliff's edge, Garran released his dragon. Wings of black onyx, veined with molten ruby, unfurled in a thunderous sweep of power of light. Elara followed. Her dragon rose in a blaze of burnished bronze and shimmering silver, catching the sun like living flame. As the wind gathered beneath them, Elara looked back only once, not in regret, but in wonder. They had lost so much, waited so long, endured duty, silence, betrayal, and a love buried alive. But now they rose, side by side, bond restored, future unbound, and at last, no throne between them, no crown above them, only sky and choice and fire shared. They launched together into the open heavens, wings beating in perfect unison, the mate bond between them no longer fractured by sacrifice, but whole, blazing, undeniable. Behind them, a century of longing scattered into memory. Below them, a kingdom they had bled to save would heal under new hands and steady hearts. Ahead lay only freedom, an island, a month of peace, and a lifetime still unwritten. Their story, once torn apart by law and duty, now flew forward on its true course, not of fear, but of love chosen twice, fiercely kept, and finally earned. And as they vanished into the horizon, wing to wing, heart to heart, every dragon in Drakar Hollow felt it in their bones. Thank you for listening to Enchanted Realms audiobooks. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more tales of true mates and dragon fire. And now, a glimpse of what comes next. Teaser, the princess's choice. She was born to ice and crown. but she entered the mating ball in rags. Disguised as a commoner, the hidden princess of the Snowy Mountain clan stepped into the firelit hall with one desperate hope: to be chosen for who she was, not for the power of her blood. She found a mate that night, and he rejected her, judged by her worn dress, by the absence of jewels, by the lie she wore to protect her heart. Humiliated, broken, unseen, she fled, carrying a bond that would never be. But fate is not always finished with the first choice. During alpha training, where only the strongest survive and kings are forged in fire, she is seen again by a dragon who does not look at her crown or her disguise, but at her soul. He is the alpha of alphas, the future Dragon King, and he is her second chance mate. Now she must decide, will she risk her heart again after destiny betrayed her once? In the world of dragons, a second chance mate is rare. But when the Alpha King claims his fire, there is no escaping the bond. Coming next in Enchanted Realms audiobooks, The Princess's Choice.